outgrows itself all the time.
I haven't got rid of the house for it anymore.
Yeah. But anyway, we found out this morning that we could ramble forever and it could be edited into anything. And right now, it's, you know, after one trial, we weren't doing too well, so we're talking about
23.
That's the first time I can remember because we had a brand new Buick. And that was when we come over. See, I always lived in Haley. I was raised in Haley. And then my folks would always come over there and salmon
So
fishing.
you come up for fishing or hunting or,
Johnny for salmon fishing.
and you got hooked.
Huh?
And you got hooked.
Well, what really started that more than anything else was I was working at the triumph mine. And, at that particular time, I was working in a shop, and I had a boss that was getting ready to leave. He didn't know it, but he was afraid he was going to be pushed out, you know. And it made it pretty hard to get along. And the doctor told me to get out of there and rest up my stomach. He says, you're going to have an ulcer, so I come over here. Didn't have any way to make a living, so I
Were
started
you married then?
Oh, yeah.
I started riding fishermen.
Oh.
That was in the 50s, early 50s. Well, that was before I bought this place.
Yeah.
You know?
52.
Are you getting sound okay, Jack?
When I first come into this country I was just a kid. We used to come on every Sunday or every summer for about 2 weeks. My grandmother, she had run camp, and our folks would leave us there with her. And then 2 weeks later, they'd come pick us up.
So you had to learn to guide on your own. You had
Huh?
to guide yourself, huh?
Oh yeah, well there was no problem there. We'd build a raft and fishing out there all day long, you know, after camp was cleaned up. She was the original environmentalist in this country because you didn't leave anything in camp that was out of place or dirty or anything. It was just...
What is your grandmother's name, and what kind of camp did she run?
It was
Or
just...
was it the relatives?
Oh.
She just gathered up a bunch of relatives and kids and grandkids, mostly all grandkids, and bring us over there, and our friends. And our folks would bring us over and set us down and leave us for 2 weeks, and then they'd come and get us.
Her name was Betty Rember, too.
Oh.
She was a great outdoor woman. Loved to fish. Camp. She didn't care about the hunting camp so much, but she liked the camp. And then I kind of... Well, we used to come over in honky-tonk in Stanley then from all the time from the 30s on. But I worked at the Triumph Mine from starting in there about in 36.
Mm-hmm.
And worked there for...
Out of Haley.
Did you work in any mines around this area?
Not on this side of the mountain. Only up here in the...
4th of July.
Yeah, 4th of July. I just went up there and worked 3 shifts for a guy that was leaving. He had a contract and he had to go to Salt Lake, and I worked 3 shifts up there for him.
So what did you do to make a living when you
Over here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just come here in the summer times, and I worked at guiding all the time and trapping in the fall. Then in the summer times, on all the roads that were built here, I worked on almost every road from the Galena down this way when it started to improve the roads. I guess I didn't miss any of them. Yeah, one little section the other side of Stanley. But the rest of it was all the valley. I worked on almost all those roads because I worked as a heavy-duty welder most of the time.
When did you get into trapping?
When I was a kid. I started it just when I first found my first trap.
What kind of animals?
Well, when you're trapping, to make a living out of it, you got to set a trap for everything that's legal and got a fur on it. And that way, anything you pick up on your regular route, helps pay expenses. But my big income was marten, mink, and beaver. beaver, especially after they opened that beaver trapping somewhere around 56, I think it was. And there was beaver in every canyon and all along the river. In fact, I took 130 beaver, 131 or 2 beaver there in about 3 weeks. Then I quit trapping, I just had to start taking care of her. But that was the big year because there was an overabundance of them and they were doing a lot of damage, a lot of complaints about them. And the caretaker trappers that worked for the state were just not covering enough country. And they opened it wide open.
How much per pelt?
At that time, I think I averaged $17 a piece. That was average for the big and small, something close to that.
What did you get? What was the best price you ever got for beaver?
Well, if you get the big blankets, I've got up as much as $45 for one beaver. But that was the large, what they call blanket beaver.
May I ask if you lost some of your fingers in some of your traps?
No.
No?
No, I lost some of them. Well, I was through a doctor's bobble, mainly.
Oh.
I had a hand operated on me, bandaged everything all together, and they just grew together. Good grafting job, but the scar tissue draw them up. And then he tried to fix it. Another doctor tried to fix it, and it got worse. Got them mashed a couple times since after that. Between the times, I should say.
Betty, what were you up to though? Craig was trapping.
And there wasn't any nurses in the valley except Susie Bond. And she had a restaurant down in Stanley. And she said when I came in the valley, she said, well, now it's up to you, Betty. And I said, oh, no, I don't want to. Because people would let Susie take care of them, and then as soon as they got well, they didn't have a good word to say about her. Because she was a pretty rough old gal. She had a heart as big as a mountain, but she was...
But she never charged anybody for anything.
No, she never charged anybody. And I said, I won't do it that way, Susie. And she said, well, you know, that's the way I serve my Jesus. Anybody that hear her say that would step back because she would swear like a trooper, you know. She was a good little gal. But one summer, we always got up at about 3 in the morning
Betty did.
in order to have breakfast at 4. So Craig could take
Breakfast was at 3:30, and I was on the river at 4 o'clock in the morning.
because that's when he could catch the fish. And we had a morning off. And it was 6 o'clock, and we were sitting at the breakfast table enjoying our coffee. And somebody drove up, and we had the driveway in there at that time. And he drove up, and he came right up to the doorstep. And I said, why don't you drive right on in? Sarcastically. And he said, are you Mrs. Rember? And I said, yes. And he said, well, there's a lady down at Mormon Bend going to have a baby, and they need you right away. I put on a clean blouse and grabbed some, what I thought I would need. And away we went down the river, and I got down there, and this woman was in one of those little teardrop campers. And I said, don't you think we can get to Chalice? And she said, oh, no. And I said, well, we're going to try, because it's just as easy to deliver a baby in the back of a car as it is in this place. So away we went down to Chalice. And I got down there, and there was a padlock on the door of the hospital. They had momentarily closed it because of lack of funds. So I asked the lady next door where Dr. Barter was, and she said, down at the Round Valley Motel. So we went down to the Round Valley Motel, and he was, what?
With the camper?
Oh, he had a big Oldsmobile. We were in an Oldsmobile. And got down to the Round Valley Motel, and Dr. Barter was in San. So I left a message that we were going to have this baby, and for him to get back as soon as possible. And I told the husband of the lady that there was a nurse in town that helped Dr. Barter with home deliveries for him to go find her. find her, and Chalice only has one main street, and all I had to do was go up and ask somebody. Pretty soon she came with her little suitcase, got all ready. I was all scrubbed, ready to deliver the baby, and Dr. Barter walked in the door, and he delivered the baby. And the first thing the lady said was, "Now, I get to go home with a baby instead of a salmon." I was a little bit disgusted. But things like that happen. Marie used to say, "Oh, all the interesting things happened to you up here before I got here." But that wasn't true. She's done a lot of interesting things. But then there was always somebody that had a broken arm or something. A lady came in that was pitched over a horse's head, and she broke both wrists. And I just put her arms in
Life magazine.
Life magazine for splints and sent her on to Sun Valley. I don't know. There was always something to do here. One year, we built trail for the Forest Service up on the South Fork of the Boise.
2 years.
2 years. Craig had a crew of 2.
Yeah, it's me and 2 boys.
And we were 18 miles from the end of the road by horseback. It was an interesting 2 summers. I baked bread up there. It wouldn't have taken a prize at the county fair, but it ate. We enjoyed it. That was a good time.
That was a good job. But this is the best place in the world to raise 2 boys, I figured, in the valley here. Can really say we haven't had any problems with either one of them. They're pretty well adults by now, so we don't have.
It's a good job.
They're on their own now.
I love getting all your rocks and show us your crystal finds.
No, God, I haven't got much around. Got some on the mountain in there. Hit it real hard, and I'd hit every place I possibly could, and take the cream, and then I'd save the rest of it for the next year. And my catches run about the same almost from year to year, because that way I had a pretty steady income on about the same amount each time. And had a good, healthy bunch of fur in the country then.
What do you think about trapping here?
Well, it's still a necessary thing, because if you don't let everything get out of balance, why then Mother Nature takes over and they disease. And when a group or a family of certain species picks up a disease, why it almost wipes them out. And it's also, probably Mother Nature has the most cruel way in the world of thinning the species through starvation and disease. So I've always been an advocate of fishing, and not so much fishing, but trapping and hunting too, to keep the herds within balance. And I think it's a very good idea. But I had this old cabin over here, which was strictly a summer cabin. And the first October, well, the water was shut off, and I packed water and had the outside restroom, and I'd leave in the mornings, so I'd have a pretty warm house. To come back in the evenings, it was just almost as cold inside as it was outside. I've done that for a few years, and then I decided I better get me an oil stove in there, so I had that, where it was pretty comfortable then, where I'd just come in the evenings, and that way and it was real cold, I'd skin the fur and stretch it until maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and then sleep a little later in the morning until it warmed up a little. And then I'd head out on the lines. But at times I run from, well, even on the other side of Galena into Bear Valley. And I'd make that round about every 3rd day on all of it. So I'd have to.
How would you get around?
I had a Jeep.
No snowmobile.
No. If it got to where you had to travel that way, you better quit, because it was, your time and your expenses would eat up all your profit, and all you were doing was taking your next year's catch. And I figured the day I started breaking even, it was time to get out. And if there wasn't a profit in every run, why then it was time for me to quit.
Could you describe how you set the traps?
Well, each one was a little different. A mink set was along the river, and always try to figure a natural runway and a good scent. I made my own scent.
How'd you do that?
Well, with fish and meat parts, mostly fish, and a little beaver castor in there, and a little bit of the natural mink scent. But I ended up with a scent that would catch anything that was on foot. It would, anything from cats to, well, like beaver was a special scent of its own. I used that. But then muskrat, mink, and fox, coyotes, cats, marten would all come to that same scent, and it was a good scent.
Did you experiment to make it?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. We used it last year, and it was still working good.
You were just telling us how you set the traps a little differently, or
Oh yeah, so a beaver trap is, well, with beaver, the main thing you had to have a grounding set. With the type of set I made, I used a front foot set. And I'd fix it so my trap would slide down a wire to a heavy weight. I had a catch on it where it got to the bottom, it couldn't come up, and then within 2 minutes your beaver was drowned. He wasn't sitting there rolling around twisting. And that, all I needed to catch beaver was a drowning water. And my scent would do the rest of it. I put my scent on the bank wherever I had a place to set the trap. And the drowning water deep enough to drown him. And that's all I needed, because the scent would take him right to the trap.
what would release the weight in the slide?
It was on a slide, on a very free sliding slide, and it was an angle iron that was bent with a big hole where it would slide down that wire, and hooked the other end to the trap. And when he tried to come up, the angle iron kinked the wire, and there was no chance of him getting back up. And with mink, I used something similar, mostly maybe just tie a rock on a trap where you can get it out. But grounding sets wherever possible on water animals. And then for your coyotes and fox, why, it's almost the same thing. You want to first try to find a natural runway, crossing areas, like off of this ridge across the road here, the coyotes come down that ridge steady. And so if you get a good scent set within 50 yards, why, they'll pick it up.
Do you see many animals around
Huh?
now?
Oh, yeah,
Are there lots of them?
well, I haven't been out this year to see. I see a few mink tracks, and there's beaver. There's quite a few beaver around. I understand.
Lots of otter.
Yeah, there's a lot of otter in the river, but they've been protected for so long now that they're really, in my opinion, there's too many of them. Because you watch down here when they plant the salmon, and you see 10 or 12 otter just wiping up on them for 2 or 3 weeks. So they take a terrible amount of them. And the people really enjoy seeing an otter, but the chances of seeing them is quite rare until you make a feed bed for them, like they do when they plant those fish, and then they get quite tame, and they just sit there and feed on those planted trout. My job in here of construction, I couldn't make a living in here in the summertime after the guiding stopped. They put a stop to the salmon guiding. I put a stop to it in about 1964, 5, somewhere around there.
You put a stop in yourself, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it got to the point where I showed so many people how to fish and where to fish. And then and many times I had to hook that salmon for those people. They couldn't catch one or anything. I'd float a bait down there and just as soon as I set the hook line, let them go with him. And so then there was so much, there were several of us guys that were fishing this river. I had a friend down at Clayton, Stan Young, who was a top-notch fisherman, you know. I never fished only with him when he had a big crew, or sometimes when I needed some help, I'd get him to come with me. But other than that, why, if I saw him fishing, I'd get away from him, because if there was an easy one there, he had it. I wouldn't want to fish where, and that's what a lot of people used to follow me around, figuring I knew where all the fish were. But unless they were well experienced in catching salmon, I'd catch the fish and they'd get mad. So it ended up that they had the game department come up with well, I guess they passed it as a law that whoever hooked the fish, it shall be his possession, and you're only allowed two in possession. So that kind of stopped the guiding without cheating. And it was about time to quit anyway. Construction work was coming in here good, and I done far better on construction after the salmon population was dwindled because of I suppose through the dams and commercial fishing together, why the salmon population dwindled way down, and it just made it harder to have a satisfied customer. Because when I was guiding, I'd send them home with a fish, or I wouldn't charge them anything, and I never lost any money on it.
All right, Betty, maybe you have some thoughts you could tell Angel and I about those days too. Do you have anything to add to it that you can think of?
What about your homesteading you studied?
Patsy?
The homesteading studies, I haven't gotten very far. I have a list of the homesteading people, but
How did you get interested in that?
I just thought it was something that ought to be done because it should be done for the centennial. That's why I started. But the Historical Society has very little on Sawtooth Valley. Very little.
Have you gotten anything collected, or?
I have a little collected. Most of it will be from Martin, because he can tell me a lot. Or Alden. Alden can tell me a lot about the people that came in this area. There were some interesting stories, you know. But
Tell me briefly.
I can't tell any of them. You know that Alturas Lake was homesteaded by Mrs. Law? Wasn't that her name?
I don't know whether it was Law when it homesteaded or not, but Bradford. Yeah, it was Law, I'm sure.
And then was there a
Her
homestead?
name was Law after the Bradford boys were
Yeah.
raised.
Was there a homestead at Pettit?
I don't think there was ever a homestead at Pettit. There isn't now. There's no private ground there.
There's
except
no private ground there. The McDonald place is just a lease.
Still is.
So many of the old timers, though, they didn't get the people at Old Obsidian. There was a family up there, what's their name?
All those Snyders.
Nellie Fisher.
Fisher.
The Fishers came in here. And all of that's lost. And it could have been. Could have been picked up, but and then Martin has all. I think they did. And Carrie Williams was Dave Williams' second wife that lived up where Morgan does now. That will be invaluable. And I don't really have very much to add, except I came into this country to spend summers after my sister married, or before my sister married Alden Shaw. And she only lived 2 years after they were married, and she's buried up on the Mesa River Ranch.
Did most of the people that came up here come from down around Twin Haley and they just kind of migrated
Oh,
here?
no,
Or were they
no.
from all over?
Well, up until the 50s, why there were families that were here were old families. And there was no new families moved in here. I think I was probably one of the first ones that got this place. This was the first ground that changed
Far
hands
away now.
for a long time.
Let's put it further away.
But Dave Williams divided some of his ground up to his kids when they got married. And Marie and Bill Sullivan had the ranch up here. And Stub Merritt's,
Not
no, that was Ted's.
That was it.
Ted had the one where McNichols there. And Bella was a daughter. She had the ranch just above the Rocky Mountain here. And Bill Sullivan and Marie Williams, had the one in between. And they've owned that whole river bottom there, most all of it, through that whole area. And Theron and Norma had the ranch on the Larson, Larson's hand. Dave divided that all up with these kids and kept the home place, which is still up there, and Morgan has that.
But Mr. Shaw came in here from South Dakota. He came in as an engineer for the mine. It was a
Aztec.
Fisher mine.
Aztec mine.
Was it? I
Yeah.
thought it was a Fisher mine.
They call it the Aztecs anyway.
They do now, but when he came in, it was called the Fisher mine.
Maybe it was.
But
Sorry.
But that's all right. The Shaws entertained people from all over the world. They had first there because the father was Mr. Harlan, and he was an agronomist from Washington, D.C., and he was at the experimental station out at Blackfoot. I can't remember the name of the town. But that family came here every year. And then I have a picture of Senator Bora taken. The lady that gave it to me said it was taken at the Shaw Ranch, and Alden said it wasn't. But but it was taken in 1915. So Senator Bora and his party did visit the Shaw Ranch, which is...
It was quite a thing in those days to have the Senator Bora visiting.
Well, he's one of our statesmen, I think, from Idaho. I don't know whether you even have ever heard of him or not, but he ranked along with Frank Church.
There was another millionaire that had a lease on the Pettit Lake up there. Mary Brooks has that place now. And his name was Jim McDonald. And he used to come up all the time. He stayed year-round a time or two when he and his wife would get to fight, and he'd come and stay all winter. And that was awesome.
When did Breckenridge's get involved?
Well, I think Breckenridge probably got involved. I
In the
can't tell you
40s.
for sure. Huh?
In the
In
40s,
the
I
40s,
think.
because the Buster Bank Ranch, where it is now, was homesteaded by a guy by the name of Clark. What's his first name?
Clark? I don't know. That was
Well, Bill Clark was his brother. I knew him, and he
Clark.
worked. Huh?
Is it Clark? But I can't tell you what it was.
I thought it was. I knew him well.
But anyway, it's been interesting to watch the development of the valley, and we are very grateful for the FNRA coming in and stopping the development, because if they hadn't, we would have had A-frames from catching to Stanley. Every lot practically.
Condominiums later.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
by the way, how was that building there?
it was built in 1935.
Lark.
The Busterback was homesteaded by Bob Lark.
And that was in the 30s. Because he lived in Haley. I knew him before they come over here.
What did a homesteading or a land grant involve?
Had to be surveyed, had to have a cabin on it, and you had to either use it as good pasture ground or irrigated ground. You had to live on it a full year before you could get a patent on it.
Didn't it take 5 years to get the final patent?
I don't know for sure how long it took, because that was before our time. All the homesteading stopped along the late 30s.
Isabel Miller tell me that the Clark Miller Ranch was homesteaded in 1905?
Could
I
well
wouldn't be
been, yes.
surprised. Wouldn't be
Could
surprised.
well have been. Because all of that country up there, Williams and Shaw and all of them come in the early 1900s. And so I just, the Upper Valley, and like I say, it stayed in the families for years and years and years. And it hasn't been up too much lately that it has just been more or less lately that all these places have changed hands.
And they really didn't make very much money. They just existed. They didn't, there wasn't a lot of money to be made.
No. That's the reason I never tried to stay in here and try to make a living even after we got the property. After I'd take what I could make right quick, I'd go find me a winter's job somewhere.
Oh, and when we first came into this country, when Craig was coming over here salmon fishing after work, you really counted on blowing a tire about every time you came over because the road was so rough. When did they pave this? What year did they pave it?
55.
See, this was a gravel road before then.
So over Galena and everything was gravel.
From Ketchum up. And then they went to where the NRA building is. And that section from there, that was one of the last ones they done. They done Galena before they done that section between the NRA building and bottom Galena. And then they done Galena. And we had worked on a job that went from Galena to Chuck Hansen's. And then the next job went
Came from Stanley out, didn't it?
no, I think 56 or 7 is when they done that job from the NRA building up. And the last job on the whole thing was from Chuck Hansen's to Stanley. And then they just come sections after that.
They never paved the road in Stanley.
So what was the road like in the winter?
Closed after the big storm, all of Galena was.
Everybody went out in the fall and got all their winter's groceries. And then planned on staying in here.
And they kept their own stock in here too, and some of the stock in the winter or summertime, you could just hang your hat on their ribs, or some of them, because you just didn't, almost everybody had more stock than had feed for.
So the reason they take the stock out now is because they can.
Yes,
Before they really
transportation's easy, and the roads are good, and pasture is worth as much as hay. Probably worth more, because when they get up here for their spring pasture, well, they've got good live feed, and they've got calves growing, and the cows are producing a lot of milk. It makes just real good calves. And then they go down into a warmer country for winter, and the cows that are bred for the next year do real well down in that country, where up here they didn't. They just got so poor and always fell off and lost weight. It's just improved the stock situation 100% by moving them out this summertime.
Wintertime.
Wintertime, I should say.
When you were driving over in the gravel road days, what was Smiley Creek and Beaver Creek and Obsidian, were there little stops all along the way, or?
Nothing at Smiley Creek. And Beaver Creek was a bootleg joint for quite a long time. Before and all it was a cabin. And it wasn't until, I don't remember Smiley Creek come in there in the 50s or the late 50s.
People that run it, what was their name?
I don't know, things kind of slipped my mind now. Anyway, it was a Vader ranch. She was a Vader. Louise something.
But they built the first
store. Yeah.
store there.
And the Obsidian, actually, what's there now is not really what it used to be.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
And Obsidian used to be on the old Pole Creek Road, on the what they call the Valley Road on the other side of the valley.
The post office was up there.
It was just a post office, that's all.
A couple of ranches.
Yeah. And the first people that had that, I think, was Fishers. Had the post office, and then a fellow by the name of
Paul Clark.
well, that was the son-in-law.
Yeah.
And then the
Decker?
Decker, yeah.
Oh, well, that was way later down.
Yeah, but he bought it from Fishers.
Paul Clark.
Mhm.
Jim Decker. Trigger Jim.
And then Trigger Jim moved it down to where it is at the present time.
What Trigger Jim did,
He hung it on himself. He was a fellow from Ohio, and he read Wild West things.
He was a gun collector, though. He had quite a collection of guns.
He was quite a guy.
So all the stories people hear about Stanley being such a wild place and everything, it's really true, isn't it?
Should have been here in the 30s. It was very interesting.
You'd never go to Stanley on a Saturday night that you wouldn't see at least 3 or 4 just damn hard fights. I mean, until somebody got knocked out. It wouldn't stop. And there was one fellow that worked for the Rocky Mountain up here, Bill Hamilton, and he loved to fight. He never won one in his life. He went down every Saturday night and got whipped. But he'd go back. And the CCs, when they were in here, why, you'd see 20, 30 fights a night. Because they had a CC camp at Redfish, they had one at Cape Horn, and they had one down on Yankee Fork.
Did they build most of the campgrounds sometimes?
They were building campgrounds and trails, yes.
But the different camps would fight each other. The regular gang fights.
It was basically entertainment.
Yeah. They'd come to the dance. That's when the Ace of Diamonds dance hall was here. I hope there's some pictures of that somewhere. I haven't found any.
Bob might have some.
He might, but I kind of doubt it. When they got rid of it, they were glad to get rid of it. But it was a fun place. I went to my first dance in Stanley when I was 13. My gracious, that was fun. And you danced with everybody that asked you, you know, you didn't just dance with the one that brought you.
Is that how the fight got started?
No, not necessarily.
No. Oh no, there wasn't any reason for fights half the time. Somebody looked cross-eyed at somebody else. That's all it took.
In that Ace of Diamonds, after everybody had quit dancing, it was just daylight. And there was half a dozen of those CC kids on the bench, just passed out and asleep. Another guy come in and walked up to one, picked his head up, knocked him off the bench, went right down the line, just knocked them all off the bench for no reason at all. And they had a pug out here at Cape Horn that whipped everybody. he was mean, and he'd been beat up a lot, scarred from one end to the other. But he was still far above anybody else in the camp when it come to a fighter. And he just was mean as could be, and he whipped one little young fella bad. He just really beat him up one night. So the next weekend, why, he was in the bar drunk again, the Pug was, and this kid walked in there and he said, "Pug, you SOB, you whipped me once, but you can't do it again." He held his fists up. Outside we go until a kid run outside and the Pug come out after him with both hands, and his partner hit the Pug right across the head with a two before and just dropped him right there. Now that's the way things were going. But that was
Did you two meet at the Ace of Diamonds?
no.
No, we met at a dance in,
Hell, I just gotten over a black eye that trip.
we met at a dance in Haley. At the Opera House. Was it the Opera House?
They called it the old Opera House.
It's where the Atkinsons are
is
now.
Yeah.
So what were the dances like? Was it ballroom dancing? Was it?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. And good orchestra.
Good orchestras. in
Real
those
good
days.
orchestra.
Where'd they come from?
Oh, local and all over. Golly, they
Twin
had-
Falls, usually.
So is that at the Ace of Diamonds?
No,
Oh,
they had
that
local
was
stuff,
local
country
there.
western over here, banjo, and one guy had a saxophone. Clyde Gillespie played
Clyde
that
Gillespie.
saxophone.
Clyde Gillespie's a fellow that's in Boise that I wanted Jack to see.
And they had good music, though, good old honky-tonk piano, and good dance, good rhythm, you know. But over on the other side, they had some real good music.
So when did the infamous Stanley stomp start? Was that in the 50s?
Oh, yeah, 50s or 60s.
And what was that in comparison to?
Well, it just got wild is all, is what I mean. They started this, what you call your western swing, you know. And that's when people got pretty wild. I never did care much for that myself. I always said when they take the snuggling out of the dancing, they ruined it.
That's how you two met. He always asked you to dance the slow one.
No,
Oh,
I
no.
never danced slow dance.
Oh, no, he doesn't hardly
Oh, I
ever
don't.
dance a slow one.
Well, I do.
You're looking at two of the best dancers in the area.
Oh.
We sure had a lot of fun dancing, but there isn't any place to dance now. You can't go to a dance.
Really?
Did the places before, were they like 3-4 times the dance hall size compared to like now?
Oh, the Ace of Diamonds was big, yeah. And the Rod and Gun Club was always about like it is.
Mhm.
It was always large.
But now,
And the Stanley Club across the street, of course, it was bigger when it burnt down.
Yeah.
They had a restaurant on one side and a big dance hall on the other side there on the Stanley Club. We made it. A humane trap.
Why's that?
Well, it's supposed to break their back and kill them immediately, but the way they thrash around, I think drowning is better.
And what would that catch?
That'll catch a beaver. It sets out. It isn't set now. Anyway, that snaps up and closes them. And I keep this plowed out just about as far as I can get it when the first snow comes, because if we get a big snow, then I've got it backed up clear up to here before winter's over. Huh? Yes. Yes. What? good score. Now that big stove there come out of the Redfish Lodge. Yeah. Huh? Well. No. That's all right, leave it there.
So that's in the Redfish Lodge, huh?
Yeah, that come from the old Redfish Lodge, and they were going to haul it to the junk, and they wanted me to help them load it. And I said, I'll help you load it if you haul it to my house.
Do you use it for anything?
Well, we have a 4th of July breakfast here every year. 50 or 60, 70, 80 people here. Last year it was around 70.
Old wood stove, huh?
Uh-huh. Yeah, like I say, we have a big 4th of July breakfast here all the time. Sourdough's, bacon, and eggs.
One? Kathy?
It's your fault.
I never knew about it. How was I working?
You must have been, yeah. Well, let's go look at these traps here. What'd she say?
She said she's going to have to retire.
I would say about 6.
Filled with sawdust. Inside wall out.
There's mink trap. There's my beaver traps there. You see now here? There's the slide I use. I can give you an idea of what it does here. Yep. Now if your weight's down on the bottom, the trap goes this way, very easy, it falls, see? But when it comes back, it catches. And it kinks it. You can't move the weight. There's no problem drowning a beaver that way. Huh? What?
That's a lake.
I had about 400 traps at one time.
Hope this is
No, that's not set.
around.
That's not set. That'd break your arm, that trap. Too smart to come to scent. I set that and catch him by the hind leg, and then he don't get away. And that's a wicked trap to set, I'll tell you. But I've used it in case I hook a front foot, I still got the slide on there. See? Yeah. Wide, and that way it'll, and you just spread it out like that to stretch it out after you're stretching full length first.
What does it tell us about? I'm not sure I know what it is.
It's just a board, a stretcher for your fur. You skin your fur and then flesh it good. Pull it down over here, nail it down at the bottom, and then you put a cross piece on the bottom and stretch it out so it's got the whole hide stretched as wide and long as you can possibly get it.
Those are just old
Old harness.
harnesses you got.
Old harness, yeah. I got one in there that I use when I snake my wood out once in a while. Got an old horse that'll still use it. See there? Those are jump traps. Different trap.
What are they for?
They're just for any marten and mink, mainly, this size of trap. Muskrat. That son of a gun is stout. I'll give it one buck. Now, those are all tied together. Yeah. Now this one here I might be able to set. My hands are. Yeah, right. I just, there, I got that. There we go. Yeah. And you set her in like that, see, and then your animal comes in front. Set it pretty light, and then if a muskrat steps on it, you got him. I've got the springs already compressed. I can get it where I want it now. Something wrong here. No, that's right. Yeah. No, I can't do that.
You just told us what the parts were without worrying about setting it.
Yeah, well, these are your two springs here. It's really a lot easier if I can get this put. I know what to. There, I got it now. I think. There we go. All right. Well, I can't figure out. Got a beaver pond up here that's holding all this water up back up there. I'm going to have to get the beaver, catch him, I guess, put him on a board.
Oh, don't do that. He's a nice beaver.
Yeah.
Young beaver.
I don't know whether he is or not.
Cold.
Are you cold?
Yes.
Side of the hill when the next spring when the ground got wet, they were only just little trees about that high. And now you can see what they've done. They've never lost a one of them either.
Thought we were going to though.
Yeah. Now these old pots here are a little piece of history. Well, these come back from some of the backcountry mines, and they had what they call the concentrating plants. They'd melt the ore with all the values together, put them in this pot, let them cool. All the heavy values would sink at the bottom, and they'd take them out and put them in on a cast iron floor. As soon as they cooled, they'd break off what they called the button off the bottom, which was all your lead silver was in that particular part, and the rest of it was just slag, waste. They were back there where there were no roads, and they just packed them in, and then they'd pack out just the concentrated values that were melted down. We didn't plant pansies in.
Yeah, we plant pansies.
Huh? What?
She's making some kind of joke about that.
When we first came in, I said, oh, look, those are the old things we used to plant seeds in as fertilizer. No, you didn't say anything, did you?
They're
Polite.
pretty heavy for that. They're pretty heavy for that.
Yeah. Like I say, some of these folks are right. I'm not an old timer in this valley. A lot of people are.
It's, I guess unless you've lived here, you're not an old timer, unless you lived here 100 years. But we've had our place for 35 years now. Huh?